welcome everybody to another week of Game Wisdom Live here for the week of May 11th, 2017. Unfortunately, James is going to be busy with the next month, and he won't be able to, I think, attend a few of these. I'm not sure if he'll still be able to work with the site. We'll have to catch up with him when he gets back. But fortunately, we're going to try and find some guest hosts to help me out for the next month of recording. So I've got a few scheduled already, but if you would like to join me, I guess, as a relief co-host for one of our discussions, be sure to get in touch, especially for those of you who are supporting Game Wisdom on the Patreon campaign. But for tonight, my guest is owner of a PaladinWithoutCrusade.com. Please welcome Tim Wetzel.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Tim, it's great to have you back on. I think this is the second time we've been talking live together.
I think so too.
Yeah, I know. I think you were on during for one of our first ones when we were still. I think we were doing it on YouTube when we first started doing these live shows.
Mm-hmm.
But for those of you watching, we actually spoke on a podcast yesterday, which, of course, with how time works, you guys will probably hear in like 2 to 3 months. We'll see what happens there. But we kind of wrapped up our cast with a topic that we wanted to talk about more, so I figure I'll have him back on for our live discussion. We can easily turn that into who knows how long of a topic when we get there. But for the folks watching now, how are things going with you, Tim, and what's going on with A Paladin Without a Crusade?
Paladin's kind of on hiatus for the moment while I deal with other stuff going on in my life. Nothing new there. But otherwise, I've been doing pretty good. Just lots of life stuff that's been going on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. For me, I did my second presentation last week, and now I'm in the midst of trying to schedule more. As an interesting point, the librarian of where I went to, she recorded about like 5-6 minutes of footage of me, which I'm going to upload to YouTube because people want to see me talk live.
Neat.
So that should be a lot of fun. But there's certainly some interesting news to talk about this week, including our big topic. But for those of you watching this right now on Twitch, the Industry Insight will be going up when we're done doing our little stream. But to give you a preview, as if you haven't heard the news, there's been some very shocking news out of Mass Effect and Hitman. First, when it comes to Mass Effect, it's been reported that the team, BioWare Montreal, has been downsized, and Mass Effect as a franchise is now put on hold. And for Hitman, it's been confirmed that Square Enix is selling off the developer, and they are no longer going to support IO or Hitman. Now, what this means for Hitman as a franchise, and of course the studios, remains to be seen. Now, here's some fun stuff. This again proves how out of touch I am in terms of time. I decided to look up how long it's been since Mass Effect 3 came out, and it seems it's been 5 years. Does it really feel like it's been 5 years, Tim?
It's really been 5 years since Mass Effect 3, yeah. I guess for me, as like far as Mass Effect, yeah, it does feel like it's been that long, but for everything else that came out that year, no.
Yeah, I know. It's like, it must have only been like a year or two, right? And I look up like, holy crap, it's been in development for 5 years? And hello to XP and El Gorder in chat. Thanks for joining us tonight. But, yeah, and that's the thing about it. And with Mass Effect Andromeda, like, I was talking about this on the Industry Insight. When we talk about AAA games, like, we're getting into like the high stakes territory when it comes to game development. If an indie game fails, it's bad, but if you're good, you can reasonably recoup it. If a AAA game fails, that studio is probably going to be canceled and a lot of people are out of work.
Mm-hmm.
And El Gordo, this is Tim Wetzel. He's from the website Paladin Without a Crusade. He's a fan of the site, as well as we've spoken several times on previous casts. A few people were asking about who you were.
Yeah, I pulled up Twitch.
Cool. But, yeah, and that's the thing about Mass Effect Andromeda is that, I guess, have you had a chance to play it yet?
No, I don't. I did not have a chance to play it. I don't think I'm going to have a chance to play it. I've seen enough footage, though.
I've seen footage too of the "oh my god, what the hell am I looking at" variety.
Yeah, it is. For a game that was supposedly in development for 5 years, you have to
Yeah.
wonder.
Oh yeah, and that's the big point there. When we're talking about games that are going on 5 years of development, people really want to see that the money and the time's been worth it. And unfortunately, like when those first scenes were released of Mass Effect Andromeda, it's just like, wait, is this a late gen PS2 game? Like, what am I looking at here? And
Yeah.
that is not what you want to say on a 5 year development, especially from BioWare. And we've talked about this on the cast before, but BioWare is considered to be, one of the premier studios. They're up there with Blizzard and Activision and Nintendo. Like, you don't expect to see, like, the C-level stuff come out of BioWare.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know that in terms of BioWare, a lot of people didn't like the second Dragon Age, I believe, or Dragon's Age. I always get those two confused.
Yeah, the second Dragon Age was considered kind of the weaker entry of the series, but it does have its fans, from what I've heard.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, as I was saying on the Industry Insight, the issue when it comes to AAA development is that there is no room for minor successes. The publisher either wants a grand slam or they consider it a failure. And I of course brought up everyone's favorite whipping boy, EA, in that topic too. And I'm sure, as you are aware, Tim, that EA has certainly earned a reputation for killing a few studios in their time.
Only a few? Sure.
To put it mildly, I guess. Yeah, and that's always been that issue that it seems like for a lot of major publishers, it's like trying to get blood from a stone. Like if your audience, like for instance, like with Dead Space, and like when they were saying that we expect Dead Space to sell like what was it, like 3 million or 5 million copies in order for it to be considered financially profitable or something like that.
Yeah, it was some really insane amount.
And that's the thing, like you can't expect every game is not going to be a 5-10 million copy bestseller. Like there should be, a middle ground between, utter crap and big name, game of the year winning success kind of game.
You would think so, but for some reason we're still having this issue.
Yeah. And as an interesting point, I know I was talking to El Gordo about this last night. We were talking about the fate of Command and Conquer, and I actually wrote the script for a video retrospective on the Command and Conquer series, which was pretty nice. But that's the thing about, like, especially with something like Command and Conquer, like the real-time strategy genre isn't this massive lucrative market. It goes back, I think we spoke about the MMO collapse of the last decade. People think that because World of Warcraft is like a 10 million subscriber uber star, that my game can make 10 million sales, or I can become 70%. But it's just not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen, but for some reason we don't even leave the possibility of that being just making sustainable games. They don't have to be huge successes, but they make enough money to at least justify the next one.
Yeah.
And maybe get that big hit in one of them. I don't know.
Yeah. And I was talking about this on the post earlier, that with something like Assassin's Creed, like the first Assassin's Creed game was like it wasn't like groundbreaking, it wasn't horrible, but we all saw that jump in quality from Assassin's Creed 1 to 2. I mean, when you put them together, it's almost like two different games. The same goes for Just Cause 1 to 2. But this is the catch-22. In order to make those great games, you have to give developers a chance to iterate and evolve the design. But if you're only expecting the first game to make or break the series, you may never get to that chance.
Yeah. So it just boggles my mind that we're doing this again.
I know. And with something like Hitman, now that's the one that was very surprising because everyone I've heard who's played Hitman really did enjoy that game. Did you have a chance to play 2016's Hitman yet?
No, again on that one. I did get to see quite a bit of
Yeah.
gameplay footage of it though, and it looked impressive from what I could tell.
Yeah. And
But no, I never got the chance to play that one either.
the Hitman series has always been like I appreciate them for their design, but they've never managed to like hook me. And it's always weird about it. Like there's some series that I just cannot get into, and I think that's one of them. And like again, like I appreciate what they did, and they did something very unique with the episodic structure of that. But I think that could have also been part of their undoing, because as we've seen, publishers expect big money. They want to see results within like the first 30 to 45 days. And when you're doing something like a episodic structure over a year, there's no real way to plan around that.
hmm Yeah, and I don't really. I get why they were trying to do an episodic deal. They
Mm-hmm.
wanted to reduce the initial cost and hope they would go
Mm-hmm.
up, but the then the problem was that you're just slicing up content,
Mm-hmm.
um, and thus we're left in the current situation of not enough people bought it because
Mm-hmm.
there. It would not surprise me if there's a non-insignificant amount of the population that's like me. I wait for the full game to come out,
Of
even if it's
course.
episodic, and then just get it then.
Yeah. And of course, when you wait until that point, you're going to get the Game of the Year edition. So you're going to get it cheaper than for the people who spend full price day one for each piece.
And I can know if the game's actually going to be good because there were a
Mm-hmm.
few games that were episodic where they, well, basically flickered out by the end of it. And now that we know,
Mm-hmm.
now that we know what happened here with Hitman, it's like, well, that just disincentivizes me to invest in it in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It basically proves you right almost in waiting. Which unfortunately, that's not good because if you want series to go, then they need to have you have to give people a reason to support them. Like
hmm
we were talking about the Division last week. Like it astonishes me that Ubisoft is still supporting it and sort of managing to reel it back in or turn the tide almost due to the negative reception when it first came out.
and as XP pointed out in chat, that shouldn't have been hard. Um, the Game of the Year edition is also the one that comes with all with less bugs as
Mm-hmm.
well. You know,
Exactly.
so you get a superior experience by the time it
Mm-hmm.
comes to the Game of the Year edition.
Yeah.
So remind me again why I want to invest in the first episode. I mean, I get some people like that idea of
Mm-hmm.
it being kind of like TV, but I'm not one of them.
There's no real incentive, and we've talked about this one before.
Well, outside of pre-orders.
Yeah, and of course they've been pushing pre-orders now for years, but like I talked about this in a post like last year that there's just no real incentive on the consumer end to do that unless you're going to do something like the first people who buy this, we give them exclusive content, but then of course you're going to piss off the people who come in late, such as what happened with the Darkest Dungeon when they did the backer exclusive skins. So it's a lose lose situation. If you make it too unique, then you piss people off. If you don't make it unique enough, then you're not going to convince people to buy your game.
Yeah, and you definitely have to be careful with stuff like Kickstarter rewards. I mean,
Mm.
you can definitely do the wrong thing,
Oh
but
yes.
still feel like you were trying to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know what Square Enix was hoping with this Hitman game. I am substantially surprised that it did not even match Absolution sales numbers.
I heard that too. I was looking that up earlier today. Like I saw a post from like earlier in 2016 saying that at that time it only sold like 100,000 or 150,000 copies. And like that that shook me for a second. Like it sold that little?
Yeah, and that's the thing I don't get. I mean, we do have pundits and critics that criticize the episodic format, but we do have the episodic format working. I mean, we
Hmm.
have an entire company that lives and dies by that, essentially. And it's a Hitman game that supposedly wasn't bad.
Hmm.
Um, so what went wrong? It
Hmm. I know.
it's really odd.
If we could, if we could solve this, we would. It would.
Make a lot of money.
Oh yes, but yeah, like you would think that it would have sold more. And as a quick aside, I just want to bring this point up. El Gore mentioned this about time content or time
Oh
missions.
yeah, I
That hurt. I think that was also another thing because I hate that kind of stuff as well. Like for me,
I
yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I fully agree. I do not know why they did time missions. This is not an MMO. Sorry, guys, you were doing the wrong genre.
Yeah, I one of my big pet peeves is whenever you throw in like real life into video, like real life time or real life factors into a game like that. Like, trying to think of what was the name of that game? Dead State Dead. I can't
Mm.
think of the name. It was oh man. Oh hi TP Poker. Thanks for joining as well. Oh man, I'm trying to think of it. For those of you watching, someone has to know this one. It was the zombie game that you played, and you like managed like a group of people, and you're like if you die, that person stays dead, and all the resources and all like the work was done in real time. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I forget the name of that game. Dead State, Dead. Hmm. It's gonna drive me nuts until someone figures this one out. Oh man, but well, hopefully someone will answer, or maybe I'll try and find. No, it wasn't Dead Island. It was Dead something. It took place on like a in a community in a town. They did I think two or three expansions. One of them was called Breakdown. They're doing a sequel of it now, and I just can't think of it.
Are you
But
talking?
yeah,
Wait, breakdown expansion.
Dead something Breakdown.
Breakdown game expansion.
Wait, is this it? I think I may have found it. Could this be? Oh, here it is. State of
State of
Decay.
Decay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there it is.
I
We found
just
it at the
found it.
exact same time. Good. But yeah, they did that with their content that you could only put that in. Like you could only do resources or perform jobs, and if you didn't log in each day, your group would basically suffer. You'll lose stuff, and I just hate that. Like I've talked about this before, but when I go to play games like that, like I'm one of those guys. Like when I dedicate time, it's basically like in a bunch. Like I'll sit down and play a game for an hour, and then I'm not going to touch it again for maybe a day or a few or like hours later. Like I hate when games say you must lock in at this exact time to do something. Cause
Yeah, that was a big thing with Eve a long
mhm,
time ago. It's certainly reduced a lot now,
mhm,
unless you're in like nullsec.
mhm.
But even with nullsec, they've made it a lot easier, from what I understand. That being said, I do know there's still an expectation that if you are in nullsec, prepare to lose half your life.
Yeah. And yeah,
So,
if you have any questions in chat, feel free to ask them, and we'll get to them either through the discussion or after we're done with this. But yeah, and that's the thing. Like when those time missions, like it also really goes into factor when we're talking about free to play design and stuff about that. And
mm,
also, I should also point out for those of you watching, I did up the moderation on the Twitch chat just to hopefully prevent anyone from saying anything, should we say, M-rated in the future. So hopefully it will catch if
goody.
there is trouble in the. But just want to let you guys know if anyone wants to, because we did have a case last week with a few trolls in the audience. So it's always fun. That's always another great part of doing things live. But as I was saying, when it comes to games like, now I lost my train of thought. I'm looking at three things at the same time. But getting back to something like Hitman, like that was one of the things that really killed my interest with those time missions, because it always
Hmm.
feels like if I miss one, then why should I bother doing it again? Like it feels like the content is gone and I will never see it. I think what they should have done is just make it one and done. Like just have them all in a pool and say, okay, so you didn't log in for the last 3 months. Here are the three missions you miss. You get one shot to do them, and just go from there.
Yeah, that would probably be better. I mean, that's more like a match of the day or something like that,
Hmm.
But you just get that one shot, and if you miss, oh
Yeah.
well, you miss. But at least you get the chance to experience it and not miss it because, well, you were traveling to, I don't know, another state and you didn't have your PC game or gaming PC with you,
Or the
you
kids
know.
are sick and you have to take care of them for a week or two. Or, again,
Yeah.
real life. I think that's one of the things I'm sure you and my owners are no doubt aware. Real life can get in the way of playing video games. It's rare. I'm sure it doesn't happen to anyone here, but it does happen eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still playing games for past several months because, well, for one, they're big games, but
Yeah.
two, life. I can't play them every single day as
Yeah.
much as I may wish to.
Yeah. And I'm slowly but surely going through Persona 5 at the moment. And apparently, I got a press key for another game from Atlas, which I don't even remember putting in the review request for. So I'm not even sure what this game is. So at some point, I'll get to that one. And
Didn't
of
even know
course,
Atlas was doing another game at the moment.
eh, and apparently, there's another Disgaea probably coming out soon. So that's a good, what, 80 hours right there. I mean, like I said, at this point, I need clones. We need cloning technology, or I will never get to these games.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Hmm.
I've put in 48 hours into Witcher 3, and I'm like maybe a third to halfway through. I'm not
Oh.
entirely sure because I haven't watched anyone else do it, but that's 48 hours in a game.
Yeah, I'm getting up to like 30 out, 30, 35 hours. No, yeah, 30 to 40 hours in Persona 5 right now. God knows how many hours I put into Left 4 Dead at the time.
Oh,
And, XP's asking about Cliffsky's game. You know Cliff Harris, right?
yeah, I know.
He's doing the game production line, which is a auto assembly. And
Yeah.
I beat you to it, XP. That I actually got a press copy of that months ago. I've been playing it on and off stream, but I've been waiting for him to get closer in terms of development to really sit down and play it. But for those of you watching this, it is going to be going on to Steam Early Access, I believe, next week from the time of this recording. So once it gets there, I really do want to actually dedicate some time to it on the stream, because that kind of min and maxing stuff is one of the things that I do love. Again, I am crossing my fingers and chomping at the bit to play Factorio if it ever hits 1.0, but I don't know when that's going to happen. And again, like if the developers are watching this, just like say 1.0 and I'll like jump on that game. And same goes for Stonehearth. I would I Those are some games that I'm just like, clenching my fists ready to play, but I know if I do it, I'm going to completely absorb the game and then I won't be able to enjoy it for 1.0. And I'm feeling that may happen with Dead Cells. I think you saw me playing it the other day, but like Dead Cells, it has 8 to 12 months of early access coming to it, and I'm already playing it every day. So I'm really nervous that I may just
Mm,
play it all and then unable to enjoy it.
yeah, I definitely understand that concern.
Hmm.
Looking at TP Poker's
Yeah.
question, the question being is so with Call of Duty sales going down for the
Hmm.
past three seasons and the buzz not being what it was,
Hmm.
do you feel that Treyarch and Activision are purposely putting in less work as the games have become progressively worse?
Hmm.
Um,
And that's kind of what we were talking about with one of the big topics, of course, is sequelitis, or the constant uh, rush or flood of sequels to games, and trying to keep that quality either equal or greater with each title.
I don't know. The problem is I haven't actively played any of the Call of Duty games, so a lot of my information kind of comes secondhand, or third hand, or fourth hand.
Yeah.
I don't think. Okay, this is supposition only. Don't take this as like word of God.
Yeah.
I don't think that they are actively reducing the amount of time they're developing these games. I think it's more just coming down to franchise fatigue. And the fact that both customers and developers are having franchise fatigue by this point would not surprise me.
Yeah.
Again, though, that's without knowing anything about what Activision is doing. This is still their biggest property as far as Activision is concerned, with the exception of Active Blizzard and all that. But Blizzard is really their own thing, so you have Blizzard stuff, then you have Call of Duty, and then a few sports things going on. So if they're putting in less time, that does seem to be a bad strategy unless they have some other series that they have intended, which we have not seen any indication.
And as a very interesting counterpoint, we mentioned that Mass Effect Andromeda was in development for 5 years. Each of the Call of Duty games for a time were on yearly installments. So basically, the second they finish, well, actually, scratch that. I know that they have 2 different studios working on the Call of Duty franchise.
It's actually 3 now.
Oh my God, there's 3. That's how good we are keeping track.
Yeah, Treyarch, Activision's. I think it's like a studio of Activision's, and then a third one that they
Sledgehammer games.
Yeah, Sledgehammer.
Yeah,
I believe was the other one.
So they must be having we have to assume that if each studio is putting out is alternating, that they're getting at least 2 years worth of development, at least one for each studio. But yeah, as you just said, Tim, franchise fatigue is really a major issue there. I mean, we're seeing it with Assassin's Creed. What are they up to right now? I've lost track of how many Assassin's Creed. I heard someone say 7. Can really be 7 Assassin's Creed?
The problem is now, it's not just there's main games, there's also side games now. So you say 7, but I'm like, that might be true, but there was also iOS games and side-scroller games on the PC and some other weird thing that I remember hearing about. So, yes and no.
Okay, according to, let's see, good old Wikipedia made a little answer. Let's see, how many Assassin's Creed? Okay, so... Oh, good. It's broken down by the different periods. So that's not even less confusing there. So 2007 was the first Assassin's Creed. Oh my goodness. So there's an Assassin's Creed for Russia coming soon? Or there was one for Vita?
Yeah, I believe that's the next one, but they're sitting on it for another year.
Oh my god. And that's the thing, and that's when it comes to these sequels, as I was saying, publishers love sequels because it gives them a very good estimate of what about the game's quality and what to expect. If again, I'm just going to throw numbers out there. If Assassin's Creed 2 sold, let's say, 400,000 copies, they can reasonably assume that if the third game is as good, they'll get at least 400,000 copies. If you're trying to make something completely new and untested, it's all up in the air. You could have a game that sells 2 million copies. You get 100,000 copies. You just don't know. And publishers don't like that risk.
Let's see his response. But the quality of the games are substantially declining year over year. The gameplay is obviously worse year over year. The less money each title makes, the less resources they are going to invest. It's common business practice, which, yes, you are right about that. You're not going to invest $12 million into a $10 million profit game.
Yeah. And there's also the fact that the foundation of a Call of Duty game is pretty much solid at this point. Like, they're not going to throw in, I don't know, a RPG fantasy level in Call of Duty. Like, you know what's going to be in that game, and that means it should be easier with each iteration to develop it, because the content isn't changing all that much. Again, they're iterating, they're not creating completely brand new stuff. It's like when I spoke with Adrian from Abbey Games on Renowned Explorers. Like, when you're trying to create something brand new that no one's ever seen before, it's going to be a hell of a lot harder because you don't have a reference point for that. But when you're making sequel onto sequel onto sequel, you can look at previous games and go, okay, this is what we did. Let's, clean things up. Let's spruce up the house, in a manner of speaking.
But I guess to answer the original question, are they intentionally putting in less work because the quality of the game is going down? You could see it that way. It could be that way. I'm not going to dispute that it could be they are putting in intentionally less work. It could also be that the developers are just sick and tired of making the Call of Duty games. And when you don't want to work on something, especially in a creative business like this, your work suffers.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, we can say the same thing for TV and film. You can definitely tell when someone is doing a project that they want versus, doing it for a paycheck.
Yeah, so it is entirely possible, unlikely, but it is entirely possible that they are working with the same number of people and perhaps even some of the same people that have been working on the Call of Duty franchise, but the chances are not entirely great because of burnout.
Yeah, and there's also the issue of just how much you can really do with multiple series. I mean, Final Fantasy, we can certainly say they have some very big series fatigue at this point. We're up to the 15th, 15th Final Fantasy game, if that makes sense.
Oh, dear Lord.
But
are we sure about that?
No, there's side stories, and don't even ask me what the chronological history of the Kingdom Hearts series. I've given up trying to figure out just what game is what anymore with that. But
I believe to answer TP Pokers, sorry, I'm for some reason not answering your name. Gameplay on Advanced Warfare and Infinite Warfare was pure, BS. Black Ops was much higher quality and content depth. Yes, I seem to recall that's how it went. I believe Treyarch was working on the Black Ops series?
I think Treyarch was considered, like, the best of the franchise, and for any...
Well, eventually.
Yeah.
Because the original studio that worked on it eventually... Yeah, Infinity Ward has lost a lot of the staff they used to have because of... Yeah, because a good chunk of their staff went over to EA. So Treyarch basically picked up the pieces from where they left off and seemed to have thrived. So that's probably why Black Ops was so much better in terms of gameplay and content. And I won't dispute that. Whereas the other two studios basically had to make up for lost time, but you can't make up for lost time in the same development period that Treyarch has a lot of time. And Treyarch probably has more talented people too. We can't discount that effect either.
Yeah. And that's the other side, being able to work on these sequels so much, is that you get a really good handle of how to make these games. But as we've said, when it comes to series fatigue, it also locks these studios down. And like, I've talked to indie developers about this, about, do you want to be known for your games, or do you want to be known for your brand? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say for the brand, because they don't want to make the same game over and over again. And that is certainly, I think, a very acceptable answer. But when it comes to the AAA market, it's pretty much the opposite. Like, publishers don't want... Like, I'm sure if Treyarch ran up to Activision and say, hey, we don't want to work on the next Call of Duty. We have an idea for this, a mascot-driven platformer game. Could you give us money to support that? Activision will probably just, like, laugh in their faces and, pull a lever and drop them down a trap door somewhere.
Sadly.
And that's...
Go ahead.
And like going back to what we were saying with like Mass Effect and Hitman, like you can't expect these series to like not every series is going to be World of Warcraft or Grand Theft Auto or even something like Battlefield or Call of Duty. And unfortunately, as we said, there really should be some kind of middle ground between failure and blockbuster. But it just doesn't seem to be happening. And I know Cliff Bleszinski, he made a post, or he was talking about this a few months ago, that AAA development is in its current form is not a sustainable way of making games. And I think a lot of people agree with that.
I would like to see how companies like Paradox are doing. I I kind of feel like if they're doing as well as I suspect they are, that they might be the future of development for more AAA games, just because they don't mind taking risks and they make games well enough and for specialized
Oh
audiences,
yes.
but without bankrupting themselves. Like Stellaris is a AAA game,
Hmm.
but it sort of looks a bit indie-ish because they couldn't do everything for it.
Hmm.
And you look at these other games and you can kind of see the shortcuts a little bit, but it's not enough to deter you. I
Hmm.
mean, by no means am I saying Stellaris is a bad game.
At some point, maybe
Uh,
I'll ever get around to playing that. I have I should call Troy Goodfellow. He works at Paradox now. Maybe I can ask him. Can you send over someone from Paradox to help me learn Solaris? Can you give me a Solaris tutor?
or you could just play with me once in a while.
We may have to do that at some point because that may be the only way I'll learn one of those games. It's just like I need an advisor behind me walking through it. Let's see. TB Poker saying they need to hire the people that made Overwatch. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I think the people at Blizzard are not going to be leaving for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I don't think Blizzard will allow that, and I don't think the employees have much interest in that either. Otherwise, we would have seen a more Call of Duty game come out of them instead of the current game that we have.
Hmm. Uh,
So,
yeah, I don't. Although we could announce a Overwatch Call of Duty collaboration. That would work, right?
I kind of wish more studios were willing to collaborate like
Hmm.
that. I know it's not great for like copyright and all that, but
Oh.
I've always had a little secret wish. Like, could you imagine a Paladins and Overwatch combo? That would be pretty darn cool.
Hmm.
But it'll never happen.
Yeah, and I know Nintendo's working on Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem right now, which
Hmm.
I said that as a joke like 4 or 5 years ago that would ever happen. So maybe my psychic powers are starting to manifest themselves.
Or maybe you need to quit giving them ideas.
Yeah. Nintendo, if you're watching this, make a Star Tropics 3. I command you, do it right now. But like it's not going to I don't think it oh here's the question that I want to ask you. This is a good one for you folks watching. Let me know what you think about this. I was thinking about this earlier. As we've said, when people think about the AAA industry, there's been all this talk about trying to cut down on the cost of making games, whether it's again like going from retail to digital, working on sequels to cut down on development time. I guess the question is, do you think we will ever see any impact on that? Do you think there will come a time when we'll see AAA games go down in price? Or do you think the publishers have too much of a stranglehold to let that happen?
Huh. That's a good question.
Mm. I know, it's not an easy one either. Well, you were thinking about that. I don't know when any more cross-platform AAA titles are coming to Nintendo Switch. Have you heard anything on your end?
Yeah, I think there were a bunch of AAAs that promised like the previous gen games
Mm-hmm.
would come to it, but it seemed like it was largely dependent on sales. As sales seem to be doing well for the Switch, uh, I don't see why not right now, unless there's something. I mean, there could be something else that stops them from releasing AAA titles, but As far as I can tell, there's no reason why you shouldn't expect. I don't know, what was the big game last gen? Uh,
I know someone was talking about Skyrim. There was like rumors that Skyrim was
yes,
coming.
because Skyrim is coming. It's just coming later this year,
Hmm.
and then they're going to do another game. Um, so there's been like promises and sort of nods, but they were always going to wait.
Hmm.
Yeah, Skyrim is coming out, so yeah. As far as like the other AAA developers, I think they were just waiting to see if the Switch was actually going to take off and hold on,
Hmm.
or if it was just another flash in the pan like Wii U was, which it was.
Hmm.
So far, indications seem good, but I don't have sales numbers for like Mario Kart 8, I think it was.
Yeah, they remade that, or they did an updated version.
Yeah, so I don't know how well that's doing. I mean, I'd like to know, but
Hmm.
yeah, that's what I know, or can guess.
Yeah. And XP was saying regarding the question, depends on retail stores and console supporting physical. Now, of course, as we all remember, the Xbox One had that very big controversy of being an always online console, and originally, and going to remove like the CD drive. And of course, you know, hell was raised all across the world to get that rescinded. But like it would be very interesting to see what would be like to have a AAA game not in the retail space. But again, as we've said, the AAA market is very risk adverse. Like I can't
Mhm.
imagine anyone saying, "Let's just for the hell of it not put our next game in GameStop. Let's just sell it from our site." No, it's just not going to happen.
Not
But
for now, anyway.
yeah. And going back to the whole thing about being risk adverse, I was talking about this earlier. That we've been joking about like Grand Theft Auto as another big point. Like it's hard to see like in terms of Grand Theft Auto sales, like if they have a failure, if Rockstar puts out a complete clunker, would that studio still be able to survive? And I'm not sure about that. What do you think, Tim?
I I don't know. If they put out a complete clunker, it would probably cause a drastic reduction, especially since with this whole thing with Mass Effect and uh, Hitman happening, the fact the fact that they got laid off so hard tells me that maybe their finances weren't doing as good as it could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, when it comes to this AAA space, and actually when it comes to the indie space as well, you're only as good as your last hit.
Hmm.
And sadly, we've seen cases where, like an independent studio, they'll put out a really great game and then they'll follow up with something not as good, and it can just devastate that studio, such as the Trine developers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I wasn't. Who was I talking? Oh, I think I was talking to you about this the other day regarding like the importance of like brands. Yeah, when we were talking about fan made stuff, like Nintendo certainly has the finances and the support that if one of their games doesn't do well, they have a plan B, C, D, E, and F. But the problem when you have these mega franchises is that if Call of Duty fails, what else can that studio make basically? Or what if, again, like with Mass Effect? Now, BioWare does have other properties. They did, of course, KOTOR, Baldur's Gate, Dragon Age, but it does stand to reason. Like, who would the of course goes to that problem? Like, if you make a horrible game, who's going to give you the money to try again?
Mm-hmm. No one.
Yeah.
That's usually how it works out, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Uh, yeah, I mean, Rockstar is certainly in that weird place. Now, I've heard some interesting stories about them over the years. Like, I've heard things about how they're not exactly the best place to work at. But, unfortunately,
Hmm.
we don't have any first-hand knowledge. As an interesting point, I was talking to Tim about this the other day, that if we want to grow the YouTube channel, I need to report on some scandals. So, if someone would like to pitch me a massive game scandal that I can be the first to break, we can grow the channel that way. But yeah, I mean, GameStop. Yeah, I mean, again, there's a whole debate there about GameStop's utility or their purpose in the game market. And I did have a critical thought a few months ago about used game sales and the whole nightmare that goes with that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me check our time. We are about, I think like we're about like 42, 43 minutes and not counting our little pre-stream wait. Um, Game Sunker Clickbait Edition, yeah. So I guess here's the other big topic, and if you guys have any other questions you want to throw at us, be sure to leave them in the comments. Um, and this is what we were talking about earlier on the stream, or I'm sorry, on our record cast, and that is the digital game refund debate, which I guess is sort of similar to like GameStop when it comes to being able to trade in games. But, well, in a sense, I guess. But, as we all know, a few months ago, there was the big announcement that Microsoft was going to let you refund games through XBLA. And, of course, developers, were starting to balk at that. We brought up, of course, the Chinese room. They were one of like, the biggest critics of it. And, of course, when Steam originally announced the option to refund games, that was like 2015, right, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, I think it was 2015.
When that happened, of course, a lot of developers were saying doom and gloom that was going to bankrupt them, and of course that didn't happen. And
yeah,
again, this is one of those topics that it's weird being in the middle here between like the general consumer and of course the major studios.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fuss that developers always seem to bring. Well, 2 hours is enough time for them to just play it and then end it. And I'm sorry, but if your game can be finished in 2 hours or less, then yeah, you take the bigger risk.
Yeah.
I mean, that we might have to refund it because we didn't find the experience acceptable. That being said, I have played fairly short games that I didn't refund. There's been like one game I refunded, and that's because it wouldn't work at all. And there was one game that I did consider refunding, but decided not to. So, I mean, is it possible that there are some users like abusing that system that they fear? Yes, but Steam is also keeping a very active eye on that because, well, the last thing they want to do is have a bunch of chargebacks on a developer.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Microsoft will be very much in the same boat because they don't want to be doing all that either.
And I think another part about this, of course, is the quality control protection for the consumer. Again, if you sell a game for $30 and say, oh, we have 20, 30 hours worth of entertainment, and someone beats the entire game in an hour, if there wasn't a refund policy, that person would be just SOL.
I actually do wish that the requirements weren't quite as strict, to be honest, but this seems to be the only reasonable length that they're willing to go to is 2 hours or, what was it, 14 days?
Yeah, it has to be under 14 days from purchase and less than 2 hours.
Yeah, so I kind of wish they would extend that a little farther, but I will also still take a refund policy over none at all, which we had before.
Definitely. Or there was one, but again, it was like you had to know a guy who knew a guy kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think this all goes back to, again, providing the consumer with protection along these lines. And it's going to be very interesting, again, to see how this takes with the rest of the industry. Because, again, for us PC gamers, we've been dealing with this with Steam and GOG now for a few years. But to have this on consoles is certainly going to be another matter. But when it comes to, I guess, this kind of policy, like I was reading a post over on Gamma Sutra earlier about, again, like trying to developers trying to earn money when it comes to their sales. And like, I guess here's a question for you. The people who say that it's going to kill my game, people are just going to play for 2 hours and then stop and then refund it, do you think there really is a word with that, or do you think that may just be them trying to, I guess, save face in a matter? matter of speaking?
Could be a bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not actually sure on that one.
And like something like I know, like we said, the Chinese room who did Dear Esther. Like Dear Esther was about like a 2-hour game,
Mm-hmm.
and it was also priced at like I think it was like $24 at retail. But then of
Yeah.
course that leads into the big discussion of how much should you price a video game, and that's a good 3 hours worth of talking right now if we get into that.
Yeah. It's-
Mm.
I don't have a good answer for that one. I'm actually stumped.
Oh yeah, El Gore is saying only Sith steal in absolutes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Like there has to be a. The problem, of course, is the fact that, as we've said, Valve is not interested in having someone monitor these things. There's never going to be a job position at Valve saying official refund reviewer. That will never happen. Like they want an automated system. So whatever gets decided upon, same goes for Steam Direct. It's gotta be something that can operate, 90% of the cases, basically. Like, yes, there's always going to be those really weird or out there issues, something like No Man's Sky or Batman Arkham City, but they still want something that they can just set up and then go do something else.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
XP is asking, what do you think is the future of physical? I think personally, I think it's only a matter of time for physical to decline, just as internet becomes more stable and affordable all over. Like when I first started, like wow, my God, when I started blogging like 10 years ago, again, like a lot of the infrastructure, especially like outside of cities, wasn't really in place. Like when I did my work at Comcast, there were still homes that had like barely their internet. And for a lot of places, it was impossible to get a good internet access. But
Mm-hmm.
things have certainly changed since then. So I think it's only a matter of time. Now, what will be the big final death nail? Again, I have no idea. But what do you think, Tim?
I think there will be a point when physical becomes less useful, especially since the latest consoles are trying to push
Mm-hmm.
people onto digital.
Yeah,
I just don't know when that's going to happen is the problem.
I
And
know.
we could speculate till the sun rose.
Yeah, which at this point we could literally do it. We could just sit here and talk for the next, what were you, like 10 hours, maybe a little less than that at this point.
Hmm.
But yeah, like I agree with that. Like we've had physical dominate the market now for over 20 years. Well, actually, I should say now over 30 years. But it should come to the point where that's an interesting point, XP, that physical should move to USB. I mean, at this point, there really isn't the value of the disc because of day one patches and continued content. It's making that disc have less value to it. Um, Good examples, of course, something like Payday. Like if you give someone the bare vanilla version of Payday 2 on a disc, it's going to be almost unplayable because everyone's moved on to the latest versions. And we
Hmm.
have seen game boxes that just come with the CD key. Like you don't even really need the disc anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
like, yeah, here's this really fancy box. All it contains is a CD with the Steam key.
mm-hmm. Or
Ooh.
Activision or Origin or you name it.
Hmm.
And and speaking of which, I guess as a little bit of a aside, I heard that Payday 2 they're going to stop doing paid DLC. I think they have one more in them, and then the rest will be free content. So
Hmm.
that's going to be interesting. And again, I've been keeping my eyes open for whenever they announce Payday 3 because that has to happen at some point.
Yeah, seems like a reasonable
Mm-hmm.
reasonable assumption that'll happen. Surely.
Oh, I just thought of a good final question. Again, this could be its own topic, but you know the game Awesonuts, right, Tim?
Yep.
Well, they've announced that it's going to be going free to play at the end of this month.
Oh
And
yeah.
one of the things that people are outcrying about is that because they're changing the structure and all that, they're removing like the offline like AI mode, like to play against the AI kind of thing, and it's got a
Hmm.
lot of people really upset. And again, this goes back to what we've talked about with games as a service, as what happens when the game you've bought radically changes a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. Do you have any protection or any, I guess, leg to stand on with that?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If a game changes substantially in a way that you're not happy with, are you entitled to a refund? And of course, I say yes, but how do you figure that out? How do you determine that they are unhappy with that? And that sort of thing could just be, well, abused. Like,
Mm-hmm.
2 hours is bad enough, but the potential to refund the entire game?
Yeah. And of course, there's confusion about it on the forums and all that. Let me see.
It would be nice if they could just do like two things, but I realize development time does not
Mm-hmm.
allow for that sort of, uh, well, basically doubling of a game.
And just to clarify myself, I just reread their announcement. You can still play against the AI and stuff, but they're removing offline play. You must have an internet connection to play Awesome Nuts. So
Okay.
that's what has people very much up in arms about.
Then I'm less. I mean, I'd rather it wasn't online, but
Mm-hmm.
hmm, I'm also not going to say that they aren't allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually kind of curious why it can't be offline, though. Do they give a reason?
Let's see. Oh, they're going to leave an older version of available for offline. I think it has to do with the fact that it's going to have like microtransactions and everyone's
Oh,
favorite
okay.
account login and an account profile you have to level up to unlock stuff like that.
Yay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, again, this is one of those big issues when we talk about this stuff is that everything is moving so fast that it's very hard to stop and say that we should all do this, 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 and this.
hmm Uh, anyway, we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah, I know you have to get to bed and I have to do more streaming, and hopefully my voice will hold. So I think we'll end things here. So to wrap up, for I guess overall, with James going to be out for the next month, and I'm not sure when if we'll be able to do more of this. We'll be looking for more guest co-hosts for the next few weeks. So if you would like to come on and say hi, if you're a fan or a Patreon supporter, be sure to let me know. I may have someone lined up for next week. I just have to get his schedule lined up. For tomorrow's podcast, I believe this is going to be the recorded part of the Battle Brothers interview that I did a few months ago. I put up the live one we did the other day, so that will be there. I'm also going to be uploading one of the podcasts I did to the Game Wisdom YouTube channel for you guys to enjoy that way. And I will also be making an announcement about another live discussion with. We're going to be talking about. I'm not sure what this. I forget what the guy I'm speaking to, what his position is, but he writes about, I think, the video game industry. So I'll be making a little video about that probably either tomorrow or Saturday. So that will kind of give you the heads up about when we're going to do that on Monday. I think the Monday stream, if I remember right. Let me pull up the message real quick. Yeah, 8:30 on Monday night, 8:30 EST. We're going to be doing a live discussion there. So, I guess mark that on your calendars. I'll make the video about that, and I'll have more details about when I make the spotlight video. But with that said, Tim, thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we can do this again soon when we can keep our voices, I guess, going.
Yep. All right. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah,
Definitely appreciate it.
Not a problem. So for you folks watching this live on Twitch, I got some more Dead Cells streaming to do later tonight. I'll be posting the industry insight now so you can enjoy that. And for you watching this on YouTube, thank you so much. If you are new, be sure to like and subscribe. And check back daily for more discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. So, we'll end things here. We'll just chat for like a minute after the stream, Tim. And with that said, have a great night. And we'll talk to you again next time.